Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to redefinED Atlanta's Community Dialogue session. My name is Tyler Burrell. I am the VP of People and Operations here at redefinED Atlanta. So who are we? We are a 501c3 public education nonprofit that was founded in 2016 with the vision of transforming Atlanta into a place where every student in every community has access to a great K-12 education. So today marks our 5th community dialogue session. Woohoo, clap it up. These sessions were established to inform Atlanta public school stakeholders and strengthen community relationships with community members. We do this by creating a safe space to share experiences and to provide insights on district policy and action. So we wanted to thank you for being here today. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to just be part of this powerful dialogue. And with that being said, I would like to pass it over to Denesha Thompson Pressy.
Hey y'all, thank you, Tyler. All right, so we're gonna start with an icebreaker, and this is called a data equity walk, but you're not gonna walk, we're just gonna walk through the slides. Okay, so this activity is going to ground us in some district level data and help us understand the current landscape. So here's how it works. We'll begin by presenting, or I'll begin by presenting some data points from the latest district reports. For example, we can go to the next slide, next one. Again. Okay, yes. So for example, we'll look at the percentage of kindergarten and first grade students experiencing reading difficulties across different clusters. And then let me do an explanatory comma here. So APS is split up into 9 clusters based on like your neighborhoods. So just want y'all to know that before we get into that information. All right, so can we go back all the way back to the data equity walk slide? Okay, cool. So as we go through the slides, you're gonna take a moment to like discuss with your tables these questions. Next slide for real this time. Okay, so here are the questions you're gonna discuss amongst your table mates. What might be causing higher reading difficulties in certain clusters? How do socioeconomic factors such as affordable housing or even hunger impact these numbers? And then lastly, what do you think can be done to address some of these disparities? So we're gonna look at our kinder and first, but I'm not gonna leave out the other grades. We'll look at middle and high later, just to look at, but these are the ones we're gonna do a deep dive in. Thumbs up if that sounds good to y'all. Okay, can I get someone to repeat back what you're about to do with your table mates? Tommy.
We're gonna go through these 3 questions and we're gonna discuss the answers, and one of them we're not doing first. I forget which one.
Yeah, we're gonna look at some reading difficulties for kinder and first grade. Okay, can you go back to the slide with the chart with the clusters? Okay, so take a look at this. I couldn't get them all on one slide, so I'm gonna take a look at this. Maybe take a picture with your phone. So what you're looking at is the percentage is actually the students experiencing the reading difficulty. So for example, in Midtown, 8.7% of students are experiencing reading difficulty in kinder and first. And then in South Atlanta, 43.6% of students are experiencing reading difficulty in kinder and first. Yes.
How do you define reading difficulty?
Good question. So I'm gonna make an assumption and then our board member maybe can help me out here. Reading difficulty would probably be students who are reading below grade level or are not proficient or above proficient. So they're not reading on grade level or above grade level. Am I right? Okay, yes. Okay, thank you for the question. Next slide to get some more data. Okay, awesome. Now if we could go back to the questions again. Okay, so take some time, talk to your table mates. We're gonna obviously come back together and just share out what conversations and reflections came up with you. And if you're streaming with us, you can go in the chat and you can fill up the chat with all your reflections and thoughts as well. All right. All right, let's bring it back in 5. Bring it back in 4. Oh, I love this table. Their eyes are tracking. Bring it back in 3. Oh, thank you, Tiffany. She's looking at the board. Bring it back in 1. Shout out to Atlanta Thrive, looking at me as well. All right, we're back. Okay, so does anyone want to share something from your table in reference to the first question? Yep, hold on.
I just wanted to know, was that the amount of time for us to talk through all the questions?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. But we do have a networking break, so you can continue the conversation then. Anyone, number 1? Of course, hold on. Say your name and organization.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Fick, and I work with Equity in Education. And a lot of work that I do actually revolves around this topic. And one of the conversations that actually came up today related to this is how generational illiteracy plays a huge part in our ability to be able to educate students, improve their literacy, because a lot of, when you look at the actual research and how student achievement works, it's mainly not tied to the school, but to family income and parents' education level. And so if you have a family that doesn't have literacy within the home, whether that is a parent can't read or they don't have access to the resources that they need to do developmentally appropriate things for their child, pre-K, language development, that you are going to perpetually have illiteracy continue, and it makes it very difficult for schools to bridge that gap.
Awesome. I love that. Love bringing that family engagement into the conversation and supporting your students at home to help them to be powerfully literate at school. Anybody they all say one. The second number one. 1B. Okay. Okay. I'm trying to set y'all up for success here.
So we've recently been looking at some of the attendance data that we're getting across the state, but also in kind of the across Metro Atlanta, and the chronic absenteeism rates, which is when the kids miss more than 15 days of school in a year, or sometimes it's missing at least 10%. It's doubled since 2019, so that spiked during the pandemic, but it hasn't gone back. I imagine a lot of, and that's across the board from pre-K in public schools all the way up through 12th grade. That's enough that like by 10th grade, some kids are missing an entire academic year in the middle there. That has to relate to what's going on in their household and in their neighborhood, and being able to just logistically get to school. And when we put it on a scatter plot, all of those elementary schools across the region against third grade reading proficiency and higher, it's like a straight line. And when you do it against income, it's a straight line. There are really high correlations there, and feels like probably a factor.
I'm going to piggyback because I thought you were going to say this that I'm about to say. Saba Long with Atlanta Civic Circle. Tommy's team just worked on some research with us around student homelessness in Metro Atlanta. And so, there's obviously, we haven't seen the data that the clear correlation between homelessness and reading, but I've got to imagine that there's a direct connection. I know this is a City of Atlanta APS focus, but I do want to just mention this. The total number of Metro Atlanta public school students who are unhoused, assuming more than likely this is an undercount, nearly 12,000. And so if you just imagine the impact of that on the Metro Atlanta region over time, it's a serious issue.
Thank you for sharing that. And then what can be done to address these disparities? We'll talk more about that later, but keep it in your brain, okay? All right, so now that we have grounded ourselves in that, I wanna go to middle and high really quick. So you can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is middle. So this data showcases the learners that are proficient or distinguished. So that means they're reading on grade level, or their numeracy proficiency is on grade level or above. And this is district-wide. This is not cluster specific. All right, next one. And this is high school. Same thing, proficient or distinguished learner. They're reading on or above grade level. Or numeracy proficiency is on or above grade level. And then we have our graduation rate there of 86.5%. I hear some murmurings over here. You want to say anything, Lindsay? Hold on, wait, I gotta give you this.
I'm sorry, just the numbers are not making sense to me, because I'm looking at the graduation rate is 86.5%. However, 28.7, subtract that from 100. Let's just make that a friendly number of about over 65, 67% are not on grade level when it comes to ELA and math. So how are we graduating then? That's just what I'm a numbers girl, so I'm sorry.
You came to the right place. Awesome. And then I did want to just highlight Education and Equity, or Equity and Education, Lord help me. They have a really cool report that they did called Two Atlantas that kind of speaks about that graduation rate as well, in reference to how many students are actually literate in the district. So check that out. And 2atlantas.com. Okay, awesome. Oh, 30 seconds.
Looking at these high school numbers, it makes me reflect back to 2015, 2016. When it comes to students on the South Side, those school mergers did not benefit the data for those students, especially as it relates to reading. When you combine two schools who are failing, that does not assist you with getting back to the black. So the idea that students are being placed in these schools with a lack of resources, the teachers were not fully trained on how to teach reading, that is what this high school number is.
Thank you. That's Letitia. She is redefinED A-Rise Cohort 2 alumni. Whoop, whoop. Okay. All right, so let's go to our next slide. Okay, yes, a pause. So now that we've grounded ourselves in the district level data and we've discussed some factors affecting student performance, it's important to broaden our perspective. The challenges that our students face are not just confined to the school environment, but they are deeply influenced by broader city level issues, which is what Tommy and Saba were speaking to just now. So, to help us understand this larger context, we're gonna move on to the Atlanta POV presentation. So this presentation will actually provide us with some city level data on several issues that students and families faced in Atlanta. So by examining these factors, we get a fuller picture of the systemic challenges that actually contribute to low performance in schools. This comprehensive view will enable us to advocate more effectively. That's why we're here, not just to get the info, but to leave here and do a thing, right? So this will enable us to advocate more effectively for not only our students, but also our communities. So, but before you guys start, I want to properly introduce you. Let me get you, here we go. All right, so Saba Long is the Executive Director of Atlanta Civic Circle, which is a nonprofit news outlet dedicated to informing the public on the most critical issues facing Metro Atlanta by providing in-depth reporting and presenting possible solutions with opportunities for civic engagement online and in the community. She has served on numerous local nonprofit boards and has provided communications expertise to numerous Georgia-based political campaigns and ballot initiatives. Clap it up for Saba. Mission-driven organizations ought to have access to actionable insights to inform their decisions. Our communities depend on it. As Executive Director of Neighborhood Nexus, Tommy Pearce is working to do just that. With a background in research, strategic planning, and nonprofit management, he has worked with hundreds of Georgia organizations to maximize their impact with data. Tommy has an MSW, what's that? Master's of Social Work? Got it. From University of Pittsburgh and a BA in History from Georgia Southern. He's a lifelong Gwinnettian. Did I say that right? Gwinnetian. Sorry, I'm from around the corner. Literally. Where he currently resides with his wife, 2 daughters, and a growing stack of books he will never finish. I understand that. Give it up for Tommy.
I know, I was like, can they hear us? I felt like I'm supposed to be in front of a I don't know, State Farm Arena or something. Hi, everyone. So if you can go to the next slide, and I don't know if you want me to like give you some kind of bat signal or just say next slide, please. Okay, all right, we'll do that. So we're going to talk to you about Atlanta POV, which is an initiative that our two organizations came up with. You've heard a little bit about ACC. We are a nonprofit media outlet, but we have a solutions lens in our approach, which is a little bit different than traditional media, which just kind of tells you, hey, the faucet's broken, you figure out how to fix it. And so we really want to bring community into our reporting. There are two key areas that we focus on. One is housing affordability, which we've already talked about the connection between that and education. And the other is democracy, particularly at the local level, which again gets to the point of action and what can you do as a citizen of Atlanta, as a resident of Atlanta, to have that agency and make sure your voice is heard. And so we wanted to partner with Tommy and Neighborhood Nexus because of their data-oriented approach and using data as a way to build and share community voice.
Yeah, so we are a civic data intermediary, which is like, everyone's first stop. You think your favorite nonprofit right up there with probably United Way. We do a lot of research and analytics for organizations, most like nonprofits, local governments across the state. We spend a whole lot of time building data dashboards and data tools. We spend the rest of our time trying to figure out why no one's using our data tools. And so we wanted to partner, and we enjoy partnering with Atlanta Civic Circle because they're great storytellers. And they add that kind of humanity to the data that we're looking at to make it more actionable. I'll jump into Atlanta POV, which I feel like we just set up kind of a perfect scenario, right? We've got all this data, public data that we looked at around reading proficiency and distinction, graduation rates. We have an amazing, incredible amount of public data from the census, from the Department of Education, the Governor's Office of Student Achievement, Department of Public Health. We have all these numbers that tell us what the problems are, where they are, how much. They don't really tell us like what to do about it or how it feels or what that lived experience is at all like. And so it's rooms like this where we try to figure out like, well, what's driving that data and what might the solutions be? And so we feel like we've been trying to work on this for like 4 years now. It took our organization spinning out of the Atlanta Regional Commission to be able to talk to community directly. But really, we're trying to create a way to represent community voice as actionable data. And so what we've come up with is Atlanta POV, which is essentially these pulse surveys that we want to eventually do monthly, but we'll do periodically. Focus groups, really trying to understand issues, answering questions that all of our leaders and y'all have as community leaders, but we don't have answers to from traditional public data.
If we can go to the next slide. Okay. So what Tommy just said, a traditional data source doesn't tell you necessarily how an issue might feel to you, right? So if we're talking about literacy and reading and math proficiency, what does that feel like in the home, right? What does that feel like for the teacher? What does that feel like for the school board member? What does that feel like for the employer? Those are the types of things that we want to explore through Atlanta POV, which by the way stands for, you could say your point of view, you could say priorities, opinions, and values.
We're really clever and we're working on more acronyms.
There's a whole whiteboard with lots of stuff. We want to talk to you about a survey that we just did over the summer in June. Just a show of hands, how many folks are caretakers or parents? Okay, most of the room. I think you will particularly find this survey of interest if you have had to figure out what to do with your kids or your nieces and nephews during the summer. If we can go to the next slide.
Sure. Summer, when your kids are out of school, is really fun until it isn't, because then you realize it's actually several weeks and not just that first week. We really wanted to know how when your kids are out of school for the summer, how does that impact the family? And there's a lot of different ways that can happen. But we asked about 8 questions to 300 households with kids back in June. So right at the beginning of the summer, when you've probably figured out what programs your paying for and signed your kids up for, but it hasn't quite, worked its way through the summer yet. We found out that 75% of the 300 households have a hard time paying for all of the programs they wanted to put their kid in. 75% also had a hard time finding the right programs for their kids because the timing didn't work out, the location didn't work out, it wasn't age appropriate, it wasn't aligned to their interests. And so that's a lot of families. I mean, it's literally 250 of them out of the 300 that couldn't find what they needed for their kids. One of the results of that is that we found that almost half of all of those households, the parents are working fewer hours in the day and fewer days in the week, which is a significant productivity hit. If you're an hourly worker, that's a money hit. We always want to frame these towards solutions because we're not just trying to, discover more problems, but for us, it's like, well, if this is a productivity impact, then maybe the solution is in employers, right? So maybe we should be talking to the chamber about if employers can help support these after school, these summer programs, early education. They can actually probably get more out of their workers. And so there's ways that we're trying to take what we've learned that are also answering questions that organizations and redefinED helped us shape some of those questions. If we can turn those into solutions, we think that that'll be way more impactful than always relying on census data and then taking a best guess.
Yeah, another thing that I personally found interesting in the data and looking at this, and in a previous life I worked at MARTA, the transit agency, so I've always paid attention to transit and transportation issues. One of the barriers was transportation, right, and the length of time it might have taken to get somewhere, or just even being able to get there, period. So this is a reminder that education alone is not the issue, right? Childcare, summer childcare alone is not the issue. It's all these things are connected, and we need our elected leaders and we need our civic organizations to really keep that in mind. So again, on this, I'd say one of the key takeaways was that what is the role of metro employers in providing, whether it's childcare during the work week, regardless of summer or not, but particularly summer, the impact on worker productivity, the impact on your personal household income, right, and your ability to provide for your family, save for events. Maybe you don't get to take that summer vacation that you wanted to because you're working fewer hours. And so there's the ripple effects of the lack of, right? And so that's something that we want to explore and think through what might be the solutions that we can come up with. And as you all know, solutions in Atlanta require bold leadership, which sometimes it's hard to find. But I think these kind of conversations help us think through that, and the data gives you the tool to say, here is the proof. Not only am I feeling this, but here is the literal proof of it as well.
I would say that last chart, when we sent that to the chamber, we got a meeting with the chief economist over there real quick. And so it's told us that asking the right questions and actually talking to hundreds of families to figure out what the answers are is probably a lot more valuable than census data anyways.
Yeah. If we can go to the next slide. And by the way, if you all have questions along the way, Q&A at the end, never mind.
We got 63 more slides.
The one we just finished, which was on crime and public safety, and I want to take a quick pulse here. This was one of the questions we asked. Raise your hand if in the last 12 months you've had to call 911 for any issue. Okay, 2, not 3. You sure? Okay. That was one of the things that we asked both in the survey and in the poll. It's just really interesting to see, did people call 911? Why did they not call it? If there was an issue that occurred. So we just wrapped up the focus group for the crime and public safety survey, and we're analyzing the results, and we'll be sharing that soon. This was an interesting finding that half of the people we surveyed saw an emergency occur in the last 6 months where someone might have needed help. And then we asked, of those, did you call 911? Did you go render aid? Did you call someone else to help? right? And so it's interesting to hear from them, like what were those barriers and how did they respond to the situation? And some folks, it was, I saw it happen, I just didn't know what to do.
That was 50% of that 50%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't written the report yet, but the Atlanta Regional Commission does a poll every year, and for the last 2 years, crime and safety has been the #1 issue in Metro Atlanta. Our hunch is that crime and safety might be the #1 issue in across neighborhoods, but probably for different reasons, and the solutions are probably very different, or what people perceive the solutions as is very different, and that's what we wanted to find out more.
Yeah, and regionally, crime and safety might be the #1 issue, but personally, it may not be your #1 issue, right? I mean, another thing that we did, you'll see the results soon on this, is we asked a budget question, right? You've heard the term, your budget determines your priorities or shows your priorities. And so we asked, as it relates to crime and safety, what would you want to see your elected leaders fund to make your community feel safer, right? And the answer isn't always, sometimes it might be more police on the streets, but sometimes it's also, I want more mental health services, right? Or, PAD is a program here locally, or I want, better street lights, those types of things that might help a community feel safer. So we'll be releasing that, fingers crossed, in like a week or two. So we'll keep you posted. If you can go to the next slide. So some of the takeaways, this is what I just mentioned. Most supported public safety strategies, mental health resources was 43.6%. And one of the things that we asked in the survey, or in the focus group, of how many folks who had called 911, how long it took to get someone to respond, right? And it started a conversation around customer service and city services, which is really interesting, because if you think about, my phone isn't working and I call to get it fixed, I don't always think about what does it mean to have a good customer service experience from the public side.
I think there's an interesting thing in crime and safety, and it's like the reality versus perception, and it's like that in a lot of the issues that we're all trying to tackle, education as well. But one of our questions, we also posed, or shared 3 recent news headlines and asked which ones people recall hearing. One was that crime went up during the pandemic. One was that crime is a near all-time low. Crime's been going down for 20 years. People have read the headlines and recall them that crime has gone up during the pandemic, but they don't recall, or half as many recalled, that crime is actually significantly down. And so if we look at the data, we see violent crime in the city of Atlanta is down 18% from last year and 11% or more in the last couple of years. That's not how people see it or how they feel it, right? And so that tells us there's actually 2 problems that our city needs to solve. One is making the city safer, and the second is making the city feel safer. And they might have different strategies. And those are some of the things. We don't know what those are yet. Here's some takes. We had over 600 respondents in this survey, and so here's what people want. So this tells me this is what will make people feel safer. We're already seem like we're on our way to making the city actually safer.
Yeah. And then out of our focus group, one of the solutions that really came forward was folks wanting to hear directly from their local public safety and law enforcement agencies. So I might hear on the news a particular thing occurred, but I really want to hear it from my, the major at my precinct, or I want to hear it from the police chief directly. So that was an interesting observation that we'll be sharing with local law enforcement. If you can go to the next slide, please. So September is almost over. I don't know how, but we are working on an October survey. I don't know if you guys heard, but there's an election coming up in November. And what we will be looking at, obviously there's a lot of conversation about the top of the ticket, and sure, that's important. But we also want people to pay attention down the ballot. And what does it mean to have a local democracy that works for you? In other words, what does it mean to have being able to contact a school board member and know that they're going to show up for you when you need them, right? Or being able to have that relationship with your child's teacher, or have that relationship with your city council person,
or the head of a nonprofit that works on an issue that you're directly impacted by. So we're working on right now the questions for an October survey that should go out between early to mid-October. And then we'll also do a focus group around that. And the idea is for those conversations, both the survey and the focus group, to help inform what will be, this says a local democracy index, but I would say think of it as a local civic health index. So, you know, again, around agency access, do you feel like you are able, do you feel like you are able to participate and have an active role in your community? And if not, what are those barriers? And we want to explore that and understand that so we can together come up with some solutions for that. Yep. Next slide, I think this is the final slide. Yes.
This is our ask for you, I think. We want to hear from y'all. It's really like, can you take an 8-question survey once a month? Sign up to, you know, if you're willing to be contacted for focus groups. We want to hear from everyone. You know, our kind of geography, I don't think we mentioned at the beginning, we're talking about Clayton, Cobb, DeKalb, Fulton, and Gwinnett. And then our focus group, we're trying to get well, one, we need a big enough panel or a big enough survey pool of responses that we can be representative. We want to be able to disaggregate this data by neighborhoods, by income, by families with children, by how long you've lived here. And we want to also have really thoughtful insights from our focus groups, and we want those focus groups to also be reflective of our actual communities and not just who responds to the census. And so I think this goes to atlantapov.org.
This goes to the onboarding survey.
Oh, okay, cool.
But the website is atlantapov.org.
Right.
And the onboarding survey is important because, to Tommy's point, it helps us make sure that we're building a representative sample, right? And so we want to be able to say, in a perfect world, like as we're working on this, would be able to do this by cluster, right? And show, here's what we are hearing from City of Atlanta residents in this cluster, compared to this cluster, compared to that, right? And so if you layer on top of it the issues that we've talked about this evening, we would be able to do that with that representative sample, right? So if we're doing a housing survey, for example, we can layer that with, here are the people in the Jackson cluster, right? So that's what we want to be able to eventually get towards. Can we do a question? Okay, I saw her hand. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, gonna come around with questions. Hello, everyone. Hey, folks that haven't met. So yeah, thank you, Saba and Tommy, for sharing this information with us. We have, I think, about 10 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes for questions. So we'll start with about 3 questions, and then if we have additional time, we'll go for questions. And I'll come around. Is this microphone?
Just a quick question I know there's a lot of different nonprofit organizations in the room, and we have folks and listservs. Do you all have any assets, whether it's like email language or social media template, that we could actually share with our following? Because I see this being mutually beneficial.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah, we also
really the how. Then you know.
We've been sharing it with a lot of nonprofit leaders, and then we've also realized that they're filling out the demographic survey themselves and then not sharing it with the people that they're serving, and we're like, we're reflecting a bunch of nonprofit leaders. We on our website, we don't have it yet, but soon we're going to have, like, for nonprofits or for community organizations, so that you can share with your community, because we want you to take that survey, but we want to share it with as many people as you know, so that we can get more people and more representation. We've written email copy, social media copy for a bunch of organizations, so we can send it your way, but right now, it's kind of like the two of us spending about 2 hours a week each on this as like a side quest.
In addition to our,
I think the basic, like, just to
Yeah.
the perspective of leaders, right, to ensure that it actually gets out. If we could have at minimum like an Instagram thing that we can post, or if you have it on, if you all already have an Instagram that we can repost, something like that makes it super simple for us to actually get to the people that we want to get to.
Absolutely.
And a newsletter, of course, but.
For sure. We'll get that to you.
Perfect.
All right. I guess we have wowed you. I would have a question for you. Are there topics that you would like to see a survey? I would love to hear what those might be. Just throw, if you don't mind, just.
Policy org, so like we have policy priorities that we're always just wanting to get community information around, everything from banning out of school suspension to what are the type of wraparound services that you would like to see within your community, ways to phrase that to better understand what community need is. Related, ours is related to education, but.
Yeah, those are good questions. Yeah. There's a lot of use cases we've come up with. As you can see, we're maybe 6 months into really pushing surveys out. We know that if we have a good sample of different neighborhoods, if something happens that displaces a community, it would be incredible for us to be able to stay in touch with them through the panel and ask about quality of life. Where are you now? I know the census doesn't track people when we build a stadium and the whole neighborhood's gone. We don't know where they went. That's not tracked. That's through relationships.
I mean, we particularly, at ACC, we particularly wanted to do that with Forest Cove and the families and kids that were impacted by that.
I live in like the Stone Mountain part of Gwinnett, and Gwinnett's about to have a transit referendum. So I think a lot about, okay, what's the right messaging that people want that would promote transit, right? Or what are people really thinking about when we're talking about bringing transit to our community so that we can craft better messaging? So it's not always just asking interesting questions or crowdsourcing new solutions, but really, how do we sell the solutions that already work, that work in other places? How do we sell those to a community that really connects with how they feel those issues or experience those issues? So there's a lot of ways that we're thinking about this.
Yeah, and kind of what you just mentioned is what I was thinking about, delving more into the infrastructure conversation, because we've been having that conversation for a very long time, but just how that's related to all this, because if you're talking about childcare and the affordability thing, you're talking about transportation and trying to get to work and those pieces. So I'd be interested in seeing more about what people have to say about that.
Yeah.
Any other questions? So we have Saba and Tommy here doing amazing work with Atlanta Kids.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Alrighty, so we are going to spend some time now and go off into a break/networking time. We know there are a bunch of folks in this room from different organizations and parts of the city of Atlanta, so this will be a time if you need to take a bathroom break, grab a snack, but also talk and network amongst yourselves in this space. And what time will we come back, Denesha? In 7 minutes, we'll come back. All right, thank you guys.
Bring it, we're gonna give it 10 this time. Bring it back in 10. Bring it back in 9. Bring it back in 8. Wow, look at this table. Bring it back in 7. Oh, Christy Beam's taking her seat. Y'all better talk to Christy Beam. She got some stuff coming. I'm telling you. Real exciting school. Just saying. Talk to Christy Beam. All right, coming back in 6. Y'all better talk to her. Bring it back in 5. Look at Miss Cozy. She is making haste to her seat. Love that. Bring it back in. What number was I on? 4. That's right. 3, 2, and 1.
All right. Where would you like me to stand here? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Darian Maxwell. I am the Manager of Program and Operations at redefinED Atlanta. Have the honor of introducing our panelists tonight. First, we have board member Jessica Johnson. Jessica serves as the Atlanta Public School Board of Education's at-large seat 9 representative. She also serves as the Fulton Office of Workforce Development's Youth Council Chair and as an inaugural member of the Atlanta Youth Commission. Her civic awards include Atlanta Business Chronicle's Class of 2021 40 Under 40 Award, Ebony Magazine's Educate Young Minds Award, Root Magazine's Top 100 Emerging Leaders, and the Center for Financial Enterprise Development's Innovative College Access Champion Award. Jessica is the founder and executive director of the Scholarship Academy, which is a nonprofit organization that helps low-income, first-generation families create 4-year college funding plans. So thank you for Jessica being here tonight. Awesome. Next, we have Miss Melissa St. Joy. Melissa currently serves as the principal at Emma Hutchinson Elementary School, which, happy side note, they were a 2023 recipient of redefinED's Family and Community Engagement Grant. Yeah. So thank you for that partnership. Before joining Hutchinson Elementary, she worked as an assistant principal, teacher quality coordinator, model teacher leader, and instructional coach within Atlanta Public School System. She's taught 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. God bless you. In Atlanta Public Schools, DeKalb County Schools, and Los Angeles Unified School District. Melissa has been committed to education for the last 19 years. She received her bachelor's degree from Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. FAMU, go Rattlers. A master's degree from Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, and an educational specialist degree in educational leadership from Nova Southeastern University. So thank you, Ms. St. Joy, as well. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Denesha, who you know.
Thanks, Darian. All right, got some powerhouses here, y'all. So we're about to dive into our discussion. We'll be exploring school-level opportunities, district-level policy and initiatives, and how we can advocate and stay informed. That's why we're here, because we got to leave here and do a thing, okay? All right, let's get started. So this question is for both of y'all. What do you think data-driven advocacy is, and why is it important in the context of school districts?
Sometimes we see numbers, but at the school level, we need to dive down into what those numbers actually say. So I represent South Atlanta. It was something like 40% of our kids, 43, were not reading on grade level. Well, what does that actually mean? Who is actually represented in our building? So diving down into the students that we have, diving down into what specific skills. So is it that they can't read, or are there identify the problems in phonemic awareness? How are we creating individual blueprints for all the students that we serve? Because we're trying to get them to proficient, but we're also trying to get them to grow. And we're trying to give them those skills so that if I'm not there as the educator and they're independent, they can figure this out on their own and give them that confidence. So I think that's something that sometimes those numbers don't say, but it does give you a blueprint and a space to start with, because we need a starting point so that we know how to move our students forward. So it's a lot of intentionality. When you see that big number, let's drill down to see what's actually behind that number. That number may look different for every single person in this room. So I need to know your name. I need to know everything about you. If I need to bring your parents or your community support into that conversation, because at the end of the day, all of us working together are trying to move our kids forward.
That was perfect. So I think I appreciate the warming up activity that you did in the beginning, because it's saying it allows us to really leverage the intersectionality of key data points, right? So it is, how does absenteeism impact our literacy rates, or how does the number of AP or the lower number of AP IB courses impact college enrollment and retention rates in different parts of the town, right? And so we can start asking these questions and see where some of our pain points are intersecting, and then it creates an opportunity to have like evidence-based campaigns, right? And so it's not just about awareness, now it is accountability. And so, and measurement, it's all of those other pieces that really build towards outcomes for our students as a whole.
I love that.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of organizations here that are trying to meet needs. So the data and understanding that really allows you to have a needs assessment for your work, so that you're actually engaging with community and not just doing things to the community. So I love that idea of the blueprint. That's kind of giving you the pathway of how to get this, figure out kids beyond a number or percentage, and then the accountability piece and like that evidence-based campaign. I love that. All right, Ms. St. Joy. Can you share how you have utilized data through your academic parent-teacher teams to enhance student outcomes at Hutchinson? So specifically, like how has this approach helped in engaging parents and then improving the academic performance of your students?
Okay. So academic parent-teacher teams, also known as APTT, is a state model that we have adopted. It is moving away from a traditional parent-teacher conference, but it is creating a collaborative space for teachers and parents to work together. So how it works at Hutchinson, in Atlanta Public Schools, we take the MAP assessment, which is our universal screener, and this is the way that we share this data with the parents. So we will assign everybody, so if you were in my class, everybody would have a number. It wouldn't be your name attached to it, but it would be the number. We would have where they need to be at this point in the year. So you would look kind of where your child falls there. So we talk about this is where we're trying to get the children to. We focus on a foundational skill for mathematics and for reading. And we essentially have a make and take with the parents. So we teach them that skill. We give them all the resources. They leave with that activity. And we ask our parents, just work on this one skill with your child. So by the next meeting, when we take the MAP assessment again, we're gonna see how they've grown with your support and your help. The other thing that we do with the night, we take consideration for all our students. With the support of APS, we have a minimum of 2 interpreters for our Spanish-speaking families in the building. Our special ed team is also there, so they're working in the classroom that their child may be in, so they're also part of the discussion. Our enrichment team provides childcare, so we actually have movies or we have games set up in the media center. So if you have little kids that might not go to our school, that you know you need somebody to watch your kids, let's remove that barrier. We got somebody to watch your kids. Are you hungry? Because after you do your activity in the classroom, because that's your passport, you can get a meal on the way out. So we've taken care of dinner, we've taken care of childcare. All we do is ask you to come. On the permission form, we even say, parent, if you can't come, let us know who you're sending in your place, because it's important. Parents, schools, and the community together is what makes a successful school. So that's what we're trying to do. We've had as many as 80 parents attend, which really warmed my heart. They pull me to the side. They say, thank you for this. Because it's not that, sometimes parents don't necessarily know how to help. So we're giving them a tool to include them in the process. We're sharing the data because your help with this is going to be instrumental in helping us move this data. So that is how that works, and that is how we include parents in the data discussion. That's how we include them in being part of the movement of the data. Now, they may have individual conferences with their teachers outside of that night, but we ask them, this is not a space for the conference, but this is the space for us to learn. But if you need to set up the conference, you could do that. But we ask that we create this learning space for all of us to work together and also make you comfortable with what your kids are learning. So we're just trying to create that positive space for all of us to work together. And that's what academic parent-teacher teams is. It's a team effort.
Thank you for your work on that, and what a powerful way to empower families to have ownership over their students' data and goals. And then I really love how it's one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Because all of these numbers, standards, all that stuff can be super overwhelming, especially to someone who's not in education. So giving them that one thing, foundational skill, here's a make and take to practice at home, have fun with your child, and also a way to like engage with your kid, you know? So loving the work that you're doing.
Thank
so
you.
Shout out to you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Johnson, can you discuss how the goals and guardrails policy has been implemented within the Atlanta Public Schools Board of Education and its impact on student outcomes? So specifically, how has the student outcomes focused governance shaped the board's approach to improving educational equity and performance?
Now you're gonna have
You want me to repeat?
give me one part of it. So let me do the first part and then ask me the second part again. Okay, that was a lot. So just show of hands, who's familiar with student outcomes focused governance? You've heard of it. You've watched the meetings. You have an awareness of like what the board is monitoring and tracking over time. So I had the benefit of traveling to Kentucky and doing that. The boot camp version of the SOFG of student outcomes focused governance work, and really kind of getting a better understanding personally of why this work matters for our young people. And so student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. Anybody heard that? A bunch of times, right? And at the core, I think, if we look at the goals, right, they are more of like the vision for what we hope every student has access to and the resources to support for their work. But I think the part that might be missed, and at least for me initially, is it's the community's vision, right? And so when I started asking board members who've been engaged for a long time, I was like, well, where do we start with this process? How do we set the goals? What's the route, right? And how do we get to where we are now? And so it really was this opportunity to hear from the community to identify what is the collective vision for every student across APS, right? And then what is the measurable collective vision for every student across Atlanta Public Schools? And that's the part that now that we have an awesome superintendent in place, he's leaning into. And so we're starting to ask questions. Are we using the right measurement tools? And maybe in some instances we're not, right? Maybe there's another way that we could be more effective to share with the community that you guys said back in 20 whatever year that was it that the SOFG work started. This is what you prioritize. This is how we're going to measure it. And now we have an opportunity. We're 1 year away from a strategic plan to say, you know, and then what's next, right? And then you have the guardrails, which is what do we value? And so I don't like the term guardrails because it feels like it's a barrier, but it's really saying, you know, it creates this parameter for the superintendent to work within to say, you know, we're going to promote equity, we're going to have a positive climate and culture in our schools. And so it's saying you can innovate, pivot, do all the things, but don't touch equity. Because that's something that we value, and don't touch the parts that make us uniquely APS with our neighborhoods and our clusters and those pieces. And so I think that, you know, just for you all's information, we're having a series of town halls, and the board really needs to hear from people like, is our vision the same, and are our values the same? You know, and I think that when the superintendent's asking questions, he's got his 100-day plan and the buckets that he wants to focus on, but he's actively listening, and I have seen him really synthesize that information and implement and move. I've seen positions shift based off of data and information that he's received, and so I think this is a unique opportunity for us to be heard and say, this is the vision now, and these are the values that we still want to protect going forward, but also, are we measuring it in a way that is going to guarantee success? And so for me, in my background in the college access space, I have to say, and when I look at college graduation rates, maybe not. Right? If I look at the number of APS students that are actually graduating, then maybe there's a different way we need to be measuring, are they better off? Like I don't know if the Casey Foundation has this results-based accountability framework where they say, at the end of the day, can we go to bed at night and say our kids are better off? And I think that when we're looking at SOP, the student outcome focused governance, that's the question that we're leaning into, but I just want to make sure that it's clear that that's the community, like the community gives us those marching orders, and then we take that back to the superintendent and he develops a plan to implement that work. Is
that was great. Yeah, and so I'm glad you brought up that was the community's vision, because a lot of folks don't feel empowered to call a board member. Yes, making public comment is great, but having those one-on-one relationships and conversations through email, walking up, literally, I'm like, can I have your number? She's like, sure. And so everyone has, what I've seen, yesterday we were at the community engagement. Also, let me do a quick plug for y'all, because this is also a shout out. So the board and superintendent are doing like a joint community engagement tour. So that's something that's new and different. So they're coming together and they're really taking that opportunity to really listen to families. They let people talk on the mic for like 10 full minutes. But that information gathering is super important because, again, it's the community's vision that is informing this policy. So definitely appreciate y'all's work on that and the upcoming community engagement plans that you guys will be working on. So yeah, it's us. We gotta hold everybody accountable. And this is the policy that allows us as the community to do that. Question number 4. Okay, so how do you all think that data-driven advocacy, how does it improve student outcomes? How does it actually improve equity?
So at my school, I really talk to my teachers about focusing on student work. Again, we have these percentages, but what does it really mean if a child doesn't meet, if they're proficient or if they're developing? It's not necessarily that it didn't completely understand a standard. Is it a portion of the standard? Are they not setting up their work correctly for the math problem? What was the true student misconception? And that's what digging down into the data does for me at my school. When you identify the student misconception, I can reteach that misconception. If I just look at the number, I'm gonna reteach the whole standard. Then you get behind on your scope and sequence, and then you're in a space in which perhaps you're not moving at the same rate as another school because you retaught the whole standard. So let's really dig down into the work that the students are producing, good, bad, or indifferent. What does this really mean? There is a difference between 60% and 20%, although they both read as does not meet. When I look at this 60%, how can I get them to 70%? And when I look at this 20%, how can I get them to grow or identify if there's something else going on there, there's another barrier there. That's how I think intentionally we have to look at that data, and that's how we close the equity gap. Because if I'm just looking at proficient, does not meet, developing, how am I going to move with intentionality? I don't have, I tell my teachers often, the future started yesterday and we're late, okay? So we don't have time but to move with intentionality. I can't get caught up just on those categories. I need to drill down to get them to the next category. So I think that that's the equity work where I serve, because I need my children to be able to walk into any room and make any choice they want to be. I am fine with whoever you want to be. I want to empower you with enough knowledge and problem-solving skills that you can make that choice, and a choice is not made for you.
Intentionality. I love that.
So I think if I'm looking at it from the district level, we'll just take one of our student outcome focus goals, literacy, right? And so if you look, we all know what the data said about the literacy proficiency rates for our students, but when we started talking about the numbers and we started disaggregating the data by race, and then we looked at it by cluster, what started happening is people started leaning in. So you had the philanthropic community say, well, what's happening and what needs to happen and where we need to pour our resources. And then you had, what was that literacy for all group kind of get together and start saying, let's put some pressure and figure out what's happening. And so what came out of that was the Readers Are Leaders initiative. And now and then the budget changed. And so we poured millions of dollars into improving literacy. And then there was a policy change, right? And so when you think about how data-driven advocacy works, it brings everybody to the table to talk about the same thing. I don't know if anybody's ever read that book, Tipping Point. And so then you have all of the stakeholders kind of leaning in such a way that something has to change. And that's the power of it. And I see that kind of coming down the pipeline with the special education audit. And I know Atlanta Thrive, since this y'all week, with the shout outs, it has been leaning a lot into that work. But now the superintendent has made a change. There's an assistant superintendent of special education now based off of the data that came out of that audit. And there will be a series of other changes. There will be a budget change, right? And so now we're saying, if you're looking at all of the kind of levers that need to be pulled for us to see different data and different information, that advocacy piece is so critical, but it has to be based in fact. It's just like, since there's a lot of nonprofits in here, the grant application process, right? You got to define the need, you got to state what's your innovation, and then how you going to measure it, right? And it's the same formula, just replicated in the kind of grounded in community concepts. And I think that I'm personally excited about what that work is going to look like in some of our biggest pain points. I personally have been working with the superintendent on the equity piece and around course offerings and those things. And so we're about to have an equity retreat, and I anticipate that some things will come from that equity retreat, that when we'll see the movement that we've been waiting for at the speed that we need.
I love that. So again, more power to the community. Like that is, I love the tipping point, because we have to all come together to apply that pressure to ensure that change happens, so that like our kids are well. So love that. This is not a question I told you I was gonna ask y'all, guys real quick. So how can folks advocate for you, like in your space in schools? How can folks do that same thing in your space as a board member?
So for me, the advocacy comes in the form of support and supporting our students, partnerships. If you can come volunteer at the STEM lab, great. We have a lot of initiatives. If you could come, let's do reading buddies together. We can arrange that. We can work together to organize that. Let's come read for 15 minutes with kids. It matters. It matters when they see other adults engaging and excited. They like the visitors sometimes more than they like me, you know, the principal. But they like when people come in to our building to learn with them. And I think that's a great space for partnership, advocacy, because then you could tell the story of Hutchinson that the data doesn't necessarily capture. Because if you come into my school, they are learning, they are working hard, they are working diligently. I am comfortable with that. I know they're doing the work. I know my teachers are doing the work. I know we're having the conversations. I know that we're providing them with the professional development and support. If they say they need a training, I'm contacting RISA, I'm contacting the district. Who do I need to get in front of you? I'm gonna contact a neighbor principal. Do you have a teacher that's kind of rocking this out? I want my adults to win and work together because we impact our little humans, and that's important.
So I think for me, it is lifting up what's working. I think, a lot of times the tendency is you want a board member to solve a thing, still call me for that. But if I knew about some of the things that you shared at Hutchinson now, I would lift that up and say, why isn't that being trained for principals across our district, right? And I think those are the types of things that create opportunities for us to spread what's working and the things that are good. And then also to continue to give me specific examples. And so I was at like a neighborhood barbecue, and a mom was telling me about her son having issues with gifted programmings, and I was like, bet. And so I just slid it into a conversation in executive session. So gifted program, right? And so I think that for me, it's giving me the tidbits that I need to build the momentum and the repetition. So if you show up at the community meetings and I've said something to the superintendent, I've mentioned it to a colleague and said, I'm really passionate about this thing, you echo it in a community meeting and say it's a need. That repetition of a thing creates an urgency, and it bumps those items that we care about the most up in priority. And so just continue to share and talk and show up. I think that's the best thing. What I see is that some parts of town are really great with that email advocacy, and I will get 50 emails about a thing, and then other parts of the community, I have to go out and be like, what y'all need? What's going on? I'm over here, right? And so I think that it is helping people first know that it's okay to reach out and share a thing and get more people together to talk about a thing, because it is absolutely the repetition and the numbers of people who say something is important that gets things to move a lot quicker across the district. And so that's just what, in my role now, just willing to lift that up as much as I can. And I don't mind, I mean, in the nonprofit space, I just keep saying the same thing over and over every day until somebody believes me, believes in it, writes a check for it, volunteers for it, whatever it takes. So that's I'm used to that. Yeah.
And then to your point about like there being a community that's going to flood you with emails, and in a community maybe not so much.
Right.
What are some things that either you're working on or ideas that you have to really truly engage community to ensure that that portion is equitable, that you are hearing from all clusters or all families?
I mean, I think it's tough. So what I've been doing is reaching out to all of the neighborhood associations. I live on the south side of town, reaching out and saying, hey, these community meetings are happening. Tell your people that it's important to come. And making sure that I reach out to people where there are captivated audiences, if that's churches, whatever it might be, saying we really need people to come to these community meetings, but also me being more available to say, okay, I'm going to stop by this thing and just give a 5-minute blurb and give out my cell phone number. Everybody that want to go ahead and call and figure out ways that they can be engaged. But I think one of the ways that I'm thinking about it is being innovative. And so I have access to people that I think young people and young adults would love to be connected with. And so I'm just going to start bringing them with me to hang out in some places and spaces and let the cool person draw them in, and then I give them the
Beyonce?
I wish. No, but I think that it's where are they going to be naturally, and how do we meet them in those places and spaces and tell more, but also what are the organizations that are already there that I can befriend and connect with and get my message out faster, and being okay with if it doesn't come in an email, but you pull me to the side after a game, like I'm still listening, and I'm still gonna act on the things that I've heard, and it doesn't have to be formal for me to get the urgency of it. Yeah.
From the school level, I have been able to sit in on some of the NPU meetings for my community, Hammond Park So I'm just able to tell them some of the things going on at our school and invite them in. I also have I've hired 2 retired teachers, one to serve in the parent liaison space, and I have an engagement specialist. My engagement specialist is just in charge of happy. I tell her times I want to make people happy, and she does it, and it's amazing. My parent liaison, she's just bringing parents back into the building, families back into the building. We had our first Grandparents' Day since the pandemic, and there were 40 grandparents, and I was so excited, and they got to take pictures, but they also got a lot of information that we needed to get to the families, and they were there and they're attentive, and she kind of managed the whole meeting. So when I came in to say hi, I was like, you guys warmed my heart. You coming back, right? Because we need everybody. So trying to get those key people, because sometimes in leadership I have the intent, but I physically am not able. So I have been blessed to have these retired teachers that know kind of what I'm trying to do, and then I could give them the vision, and they're supporting me in that, to just bring people back into our building. COVID was real, it happened. People have not come back to the buildings for various reasons, but let's get them back in for the positive stuff, because we're doing a lot of work, and we want the support. We want people to see kind of what's going on so that we can continue to work together to move our kids, because it's not about, we are just conduits in here. It's really about these kids. And it's about just supporting them to be great. My transparent story is that there was an adult that supported me to be great. I was the kid that was retained. My parents are immigrants with 8th grade education. Somebody took a chance on me along the way, and now I'm able to sit here. We gotta do it. It's so important. It's so important.
Thank you for sharing that. Can we give them a round of applause? I am so on time. All right, I'm gonna pass it to Maylene, because I'm sure y'all have some questions.
So if anyone has questions for our fabulous panelists about anything that was just shared or discussed, please go ahead and raise your hand. We have, I think, about 10 minutes. So we'll start off with 3 questions, and if we have more time, we'll go around.
Check, check. Okay. Hi, my name is Michael Cortez. Nice to meet you. I'm a graduate of Morehouse College. I have my BA in psychology and also co-founder of a company called Data in Motion and COO there. My question pertains to what strategies were internal in the classroom that had improved literacy rates, math rates, or even just interest in the students improving it for themselves, and external as well. You spoke a little bit about that with the parent-teacher, not association, but that strategy, and I thought that was awesome. So what have you seen that has made the students really want to become curious about doing it for themselves?
Okay. I have really great instructional coaches. I will speak to math first. We've had a shift with our math standards. So I have we learned procedural probably. I know I learned procedural, and now it's conceptual. So even when I walk in before a meeting, I'm calling the math coach, now wait a minute, how you teach this? Because for me to say I know all the standards in depth would not be the truth. I have to lean on those experts that I've hired. But she has really worked diligently with teachers to teach them that conceptual work. I know we've learned procedural, but right now we're trying to take them to conceptual. So she's my adult that makes other adults feel comfortable. Therefore, she translates it to the classroom. She even does that if she has to co-teach with them. We also, at my school, during the planning time, I asked the coaches to work with the teachers on practicing the hardest part of the lesson. The adults all in my building have to practice before they get in front of other adults because we don't know it all. And we also need the safe space to make the mistake or ask the questions in front of our colleagues before we get out in front of the kids to engage them. As far as celebrating, we do celebrate their milestones. We have PBIS system. We do have a house system at our school. And all the schools divided into houses from kindergarten through 5th grade. I represent the house of Epimony, which is dedication. So we have community meetings once a month. And we do team building with the kids. It's a big to-do. And they're in a house competition throughout the year. So the house, at the end, no. They get bragging rights at the end, and it gets really competitive toward the end of the year. I do proficiency parties, so we celebrate their growth. They all get kind of highlighted for their growth. We give them something for that, but I do an exclusive proficiency party. I never tell them what it is. You have to get proficiency to be invited. And I'll do something like pop pickles with the principal, pizza with the principal, something with the P with the principal. But I make it a big dramatic to-do where I'm coming to get you. And then we talk about how do we invite other friends to the party, right? Because we want more kids. We want to turn up, as you young folks say. Yeah. So how do we get our friends? How can we help them in class? So it's not just a party, but we talk about our school community and wanting us to all win. So those are some of the things I can think of.
I love that you love your work.
I do.
That's really dope, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael, for your question.
Answer that. Not on the school level. So I can talk about just 2 ways I've been just thinking about leaning in. I'll pick literacy as well. So I think maybe some of you saw, maybe it came out this week, the partnership that we have with AUDC to build affordable housing. And so when we were meeting with the city, I said, yes, APS wants to support the mayor's affordable housing goals. I think that's awesome. But APS has a challenge with literacy. Can this partnership address literacy? And so there was a resounding yes, and so there will be some things coming down the pipeline as we go through that process where literacy will be rooted in that partnership and the work in the communities where we are kind of leasing that land out. And so I'm really excited about that's a huge win, and I'm really excited about that. I'm hoping there will be money coming behind that work on the end. And then just for fun, I'm friends with one of the authors, Tiffany Jackson, and so she's going to do something really cool for the love of reading in February for APS students, and so for students who are really pushing to read more books and that kind of thing. So just excited to be able to bring in, make connections, just do something fun in the reading space.
Let us know about it.
Yeah, I'll let you know. We're trying to get it all planned out. I'll let you know.
So I think we have time for one more question because I saw someone from the library just give me the little time warning. So who would want to be our last question of the evening?
Good evening. I'm Nkoyo F. Young Lewis, a mom trying to figure out where and how I ensure that my child has a continuous, excellent experience from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And this is always great to see you. I've always known you to be innovative and passionate about the work that you do and really think about how we support every single one of our learners. But I think a lot of families feel like those things aren't necessarily the brand across the district. And so my question is, how do we, I don't want to say systematize, but make the wonderful things that are happening at your school that are obviously also probably require funding that doesn't necessarily just come from the district, something that's the standard at all schools, and like what are the things and ways that you maybe in your role as a principal are supporting other principals doing that, and you as a board member are making sure that systemically the funding and the people and the resources exist across the district.
So I would say amongst other principals, we do talk. APTT, I got the idea from Heritage Academy and Beecher, and I implemented it as my own. Thank you, redefinED, because you helped me fund the vision. And you do have to do a bit of networking, but there are so many amazing things going on in our district. I watch my other principal friends, and there are a lot of people, I think I do great work. There are some people doing better work than me, and I call them, hey girl, hey sir, how'd you do that? And I would say that we do talk amongst each other. I think as a cluster, to speak for South Atlanta, we talk about partnerships. We're having those conversations. I think it's a long journey for me to say it's a quick fix in this role, because although I have the ideas, I have the reality of the work, right? And sometimes I gotta pause for what's going on in the building with the best of intentions. But once we get those partnerships, I think we do try to sustain them. I think, you know, we have a long goal in our clusters of intentional vertical alignment. I have worked at middle school and I worked in elementary school. I thought as an elementary school upper grade teacher, we're doing a good job of making our kids big kids. Then I went to middle school and I was like, oh, this is a little different, right? And it really is, it's not a perfect science. And for me to say I had the answer to that question would not be the truth. But I do collaborate, and I have a lot of colleagues that are doing amazing things. And for me, I watch it. And I'm gonna call them without reservation. Now, how did you do that? And see, can that work where I am? Can I figure out how to fund it? It's not a perfect science, but I do think that everybody has that intention. We just want to make it the best. When our kids walk into our building, I want to be the educator. My teachers want to be the educator. At the end of the day, I think we all want to be the educators that were instruments of inspiration and not tools of torture, right? And whatever that looks like in our space, please know that we're trying our best to do those things.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Sure, so I'll just close out, and that was beautiful, and that was inspiring for me too. So what I'll say is that I am grateful to be engaged with a superintendent who gets it. And who is not afraid of it, and who is ready to have the conversations that need to be had across our district to make it more equitable. To the extent that he said, Jessica, lead the equity retreat and we're gonna name the things. And I said, that's all I need to hear. You don't threaten me with a good time. So, so I think when I look across the district, yes, to everything that you said about the best practices, but also we look at, there are some parts of the district where parents are organized very much differently than they are on other parts of town. And so what I've started asking is, can you come and share how you started, how you built the resources, how you did the things, to the parts where, you know, there might be some formation, but not the momentum, not that 50 email momentum that I see in other parts of town. And then the other way, and I'll just name it and might get in a little bit of trouble, you mentioned the funding. So we have to be real about how foundations that are set up in different clusters of different clusters around the city create other opportunities for students to get more. And so we're working with groups to figure out how to help establish those same types of foundations. I have the benefit of having the background, so I'm doing the paperwork. I'm doing the EIN numbers right now to get it set up so that we have that. And I think, you know, it's not directly in my role, but I can't ignore the work. So I'm just going to do it, and we'll push the momentum behind it and hold me accountable for that, because I think that's an important way that we create more balance, and that's something I can bring to the table.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, this is gonna be a quick wrap up because we get kicked out. So thank you for your participation and engagement tonight. As we wrap up, I want to encourage you to do a few things. You want to stay informed by attending school board meetings so you can hear about the students' outcomes focused governance and how they progress monitor it. But if you can't make it, you can always, there's a flyer here that has a action center. And I put some really cool notes up every month, and you can get like a little recap of the board meetings. Schedule a meeting with me, we can talk about it. And yeah, that's one part. Okay, the other thing, you want to follow Atlanta POV for a fuller picture of what our families face, because hopefully you got out of this discussion today that kids are not just a percentage or a number. There are many factors that impact and influence how they can learn in the classroom, and it's our job to be the tipping point, right? To have accountability to showcase that kids are able to meet their goals. So thank y'all. Scan the QR codes on your flyers. And Atlanta Thrive is having a town hall September 26th. So go ahead and go out there. They got a lot of shout outs this week, so it's gonna be a VIP experience. All right, y'all, thank you.